Andrew from Sachs, and welcome to video number 4 in our 7-video sequence, our latest sequence on leadership. This is leadership with a particular emphasis on 3 things: well-being, productivity, and development and growth. In this video, we'll be talking about specifically leadership for well-being at work. How can a person lead to optimize well-being in their workplace? Now, the important thing to understand is that leaders have a range of options in the way that they lead. They can lead top-down, and top-down is where I tell you, as my employee, this is what you need to do. That's top-down leadership. It's an instructional style of leadership. It need not be a negative style of leadership. It could be supportive, it could be coaching, it could be guiding, but ultimately, I'm making the decision. Leadership style number 2 is about consultation, and that's where me as the leader, I'm in the middle there and I go out and ask people's opinions, but ultimately I make the decision. And if people disagree with my decision, they may well feel that I have undertaken leadership model 1, top-down leadership. But consultation is an important style of leadership and is successful in the right circumstances. The third model of leadership is facilitation. Facilitative leadership is where the leader does not bring the solution, but they bring the challenge or the opportunity, and they bring a process by which this will be resolved. Now, true facilitative leadership is democratic. The leader brings the challenge or the opportunity, gives the group an opportunity to, in this case, you'll see, break into subgroups, 2 groups of 3 and 1 group of 4, and the leader gives them an opportunity to discuss the potential solutions which they think will be optimum in their situation. So let's talk about the case of customer service. If I decide on model 1, I'm going to tell people how we'll improve our customer service. If I use model 2, which is consultation, I'll ask people's opinions and then I'll tell them how we're going to improve our customer service. In model 3, I will go to the staff and say, all right, well, we need to improve our customer service. So split into groups and come up with some ideas about how this might be done. And then we'll stick the ideas on the wall and you will vote for the ideas that you think will be most effective in improving our customer satisfaction. And in fact, facilitative leadership done in this way can be extremely powerful. We know, for instance, that when people are led in this way, they tend to have high levels of well-being. Well, well-being depends very heavily on empowerment and trust. And of course, this style of leadership is very empowering and trusting. By the way, it's important, of course, to be authentic about this. If you actually have the solution, it's better to use model 1 or model 2. Don't pretend to allow people to be empowered, because you will poison that waterhole. If you create this perception that they will have the opportunity to develop the solution, but then you tell them what solution you want them to have, then that will disempower the whole process of facilitative leadership. Well-being tends to be higher in a group that's led through facilitative leadership. The skills here is deciding when you should use number 1, when you should use number 2, and when you should use number 3. But if you appropriately use number 3, then you will have higher levels of well-being in amongst your staff, but also higher levels of development. Because this style of leadership teaches people, I want you to come up with solutions, and it makes the staff less dependent on you as a leader. An important thing to understand is that in most of the developed economies, leaders oscillate between model 1 and model 2. So I'm top down or I'm consulting people on their opinions. In fact, very few leaders have the capability or the confidence perhaps to truly embrace model 3 leadership. And once you teach them how to do it, they often get very enthusiastic about this because they see the benefits of the range of solutions, but also the positive emotions, the energy of the staff. They become more engaged if you use facilitative leadership. And in fact, one of the things that can be done to help this is where you undertake 360-degree feedback from leaders, and you'll see here are 10 leaders that are embodied in our 360-degree feedback management tool, and you've got things like creating a learning environment, supporting people, fostering teamwork, empowering others, which are very much part of facilitative leadership. And then you've got accountability issues like creating clarity about performance standards and then managing performance standards, creating clarity about appropriate behaviours and managing behaviours and effective management of counterproductive behaviours. In other words, that's about ensuring that firstly people are clear about the behaviours that should be demonstrated in their workplace, and then doing something if those behaviours are not lived up to. And the final 2 are about celebrating success and optimism and positivity. So if you use 360-degree feedback to measure leadership behaviours in this way, you can rapidly identify Is this a dominantly Model 1 style leader or a Model 2 style leader? Or do they also have the capability of being a Model 3 leader? Now, obviously, the best leaders can do all three, and this is a way of simply finding out from the people that they interact with on a day-to-day basis whether they have that capability to lead in that flexible fashion. A really powerful thing that can be done is a thing called high-performance modelling. And high-performance modelling, the concept is where you identify a group of successful leaders and you actually measure the characteristics that this group of successful leaders has. So one of the very first projects that I ever undertook in this area was with an insurance company, and they wanted to identify the leaders of the future. And they were pretty keen for me to sit into a room with them and theorise about what kind of leaders would be successful in future. And in fact, I said, well, look, why don't we take an empirical perspective on this? And so pick out 30 of your best leaders and we'll find out what they're like. Now, 30 was a big enough sample for this group of about 100 leaders. So they picked out their best leaders. We psych tested them, undertook behavioural interviews, and then we developed what's called a high-performance model. And that built a recruitment kit for that client. In that project, we were able to identify that there were some characteristics that were heavily shared by their best leaders. There were also a range of things in which their best leaders were diverse, but that common set of characteristics that identified their best leaders allowed them to develop, firstly, a recruitment practice to recruit really good leaders, and secondly, a development practice to coach, guide, and develop leaders to pick up the characteristics that they didn't have, which could be picked up. I mean, no one changes their cognitive ability or their personality, but they certainly are able to change their skills or attitudes to be more effective leaders. So leadership for well-being is all about knowing when to use Model 1, Model 2 and Model 3 leadership, and also having the skills to do it. So top-down leadership can, in certain circumstances, be very reassuring, and it creates a sense of, we know what this organisation stands for. My leader is really clear about acceptable and unacceptable behaviours and will do something if those behaviours become unacceptable. Also, my leader will teach me what to do. People want that in certain circumstances. The second model of leadership, consultation, we're asking opinions and then factoring those into decisions. And facilitative leadership, I think, is the great opportunity for increasing well-being at work. The next video in this sequence will be switching to the question of productivity. And the first video number 5, will be about role clarity. Join us to find out how to optimize role clarity in your organisation.